Our second reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 25 to 32, the end of the familiar parable about the prodigal son and his return home. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. And the slave replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him?" Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and he has been found." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Clarence Jordan was a man of unusual abilities and commitment. He had 2 PhDs, one in agriculture and one in Greek New Testament. He could have chosen to do anything he wanted. He chose to serve the poor. In 1942, he founded a farm in Americus, Georgia, and called it Koinonia. It was an intentional community for poor whites and poor blacks. It was not a popular idea in the Deep South of the 1940s. Not even his own church community supported him. The town people tried everything to stop Clarence. They tried boycotting him and slashing the workers' tires when they came into town. Over and over for 14 years, they tried to stop him. Finally, in 1954, the Ku Klux Klan had had enough of Clarence Jordan, so they decided to get rid of him once and for all. They came one night with guns and torches and set fire to every building on Koinonia Farm except Clarence's home, which they riddled with bullets. They chased off all the families but one, an African-American family which refused to leave. Clarence recognized the voices of many of the Klansmen, some of whom were his own church people. Another was the local newspaper's reporter. The next day, the reporter came back to see what remained of the farm with a mind to do a story on the terrible tragedy of the farm closing down. The rubble still smoldered and the land was scorched, but he found Clarence in the field hoeing and planting. The reporter approached Clarence, kept prodding him, trying to get a rise out of the man who was inexplicably planting instead of packing his bags. Finally, the reporter said in a haughty voice, "Well, Dr. Jordan, you got 2 of them PhDs and you put 14 years into this here farm and there's nothing left of it at all. Just how successful do you think you've been?" Clarence stopped hoeing, turned toward the reporter. He looked him in the eyes and he said quietly but firmly, "Sir, I don't think you understand us. We are not about success, but faithfulness. We're staying. Good day." Koinonia Farm still runs its operations in Americus, Georgia today, nearly 75 years later. when the men who tried to burn it out of existence are long gone, and even Clarence himself has passed on. In our journey with the fruits of the Spirit, today we come to faithfulness. This spiritual trait can be tricky to pin down and even more challenging to practice. We are creatures who like to know what is going on. We want to see and understand everything. We want the journey to be laid out before us, the rules to be clear, and the goal to be unmistakable. But standing here in our corner of the universe, it can be so difficult to see. Sometimes we even think we've got a handle on the whole picture, how everything's going to work out, and then suddenly God draws us back and the whole picture changes. Songwriter Ani DeFranco reflects on this phenomenon in her song entitled Everest. In it, she writes, "From the depth of the Pacific to the height of Everest, still the world is smoother than a shiny ball bearing. So take a few steps back and put on a wider lens, and it changes your skin, your sex, and what you're wearing. Distance shows your silhouette to be a lot like mine. Like a sphere is still a sphere, and all that is here has been here all the time." When we hear the story of the prodigal son, we imagine that we've got it all figured out. Younger brother demands his inheritance from his father, squanders it on gambling and women and general debauchery, breaking his father's heart, coming to a ruinous end, while his older brother remains back at home, working the family farm. The older brother is faithful. The prodigal is treacherous. The older brother is the success story. The prodigal is a failure. But if we take a step back from the story, if we try to imagine it from God's perspective, the distinction between faithful older brother and treacherous prodigal begins to shift and blur. Faithfulness in this story is not the clear and well-defined path that we want it to be. For wouldn't it take a complete act of faith to throw yourself on the mercy of the family and the father who you had dishonored and scorned, to even dare to show your face in their presence again? And isn't it an act of faithlessness and betrayal to turn your back on your brother or sister in their hour of need, to walk out on your family the moment they make you angry and you don't get what you want? The older brother believes that he has been faithful, believes that he is being faithful still, while his father is duped into offering up more of his property, and his younger brother enjoys an undeserved reward. But the older brother doesn't know everything. He isn't looking at the big picture. This one fleeting celebration for his destitute brother cannot take away his father's love or all that is promised to him. Here is his brother begging to live as his servant. Here is his father no longer in despair, but all he can see is the one party that's not for him. "Don't you see?" the father in the parable seems to say to his firstborn. "Don't you see? You get all of this. Everything that I have is yours. I remain faithful to you as you are to me. I have not betrayed you. There is room in my heart for both of you, my son. Don't you see?" But that's the trouble. We don't see. Not really. So often we are like the older brother. We confuse our self-righteousness for faithfulness, and we are blind to God's fidelity to us. We don't know everything. And even when we do, even when we think we do, we usually get it wrong because we rely only on what is right before our eyes. We see Everest and the Pacific Ocean, and we cannot imagine how they could possibly be reconciled into the smooth sphere of Earth. In Barbara Brown Taylor's book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, the author explores the idea of our reliance on our own sight, literally and figuratively, and how it helps and hinders our journey through the world. She speaks of an experience in Atlanta called Dialogue in the Dark, in which sighted people are led by blind guides through a completely dark exhibit hall, set up to sound and smell and feel like a bustling urban landscape. "Hello," a woman says at the beginning of the tour. "My name is Dolores, and I'm legally blind, but tonight I am your best bet for getting from one end of this exhibit hall to the other. So why don't you stand up and follow me? Just follow the sound of my voice." This is easier said than done, Reverend Taylor realizes, as she does her best to follow Dolores's voice, although it doesn't prevent her from running into walls, missing doorways, stepping on people's heels, and tripping over her own cane. Yet Taylor is surprised to discover new revelations of touch, of sound, even of intuition, when she can no longer rely on her sight. It reminded her of Gregory of Nyssa, who once said, "Those of us who wish to draw near to God should not be surprised when our vision goes cloudy, for this is a sign that we are approaching the opaque splendor of God." Taylor imagines what it might be like for Christians if somebody started an opaque church, where we could learn to give up one kind of vision in hope of another, she writes. Instead of looking around to see who's there or what they're wearing, we could learn to listen for each other's voices. Perhaps in this kind of church, we might learn to give up on what we think we know as well, and learn to trust God's voice to lead us. As Barbara Brown Taylor discovered, walking in the dark can be nerve-wracking. In those moments when it gets scary, faithfulness is something we must choose. It is the choice we make to listen for the voice of God and to follow where it takes us. We have no end of examples from our spiritual heritage to inspire us in this call. Noah and Abraham, Moses, Ruth, and Jesus, all of them set out into the unknown. All were ridiculed and called crazy or foolish or doomed from the start. Some did not live to see the end result of their faithful journeys, but that does not mean that their faith was in vain. They stepped out into the darkness, and God met them right where they were. God is already there. This is the good news for us today. God meets us with complete fidelity in every moment, even when we cannot see where things are going or how what is happening around us could possibly fit into God's overall scheme of love and justice for the world. This week in particular, it has felt for many of us as if we are walking in the dark, and we have no understanding of how what is happening around us could possibly be part of God's plan. We feel frustrated and ineffective in everything that we say and do, but the good news is that we don't have to be successful in every moment. We don't know everything, and we are not meant to. Making peace with that truth is at the heart of human faithfulness, the kind that Paul is describing when he speaks of the fruit of the Spirit. It is not ours to know, but to trust that God knows. To live and act from that place of trust is the mark of true faithfulness for the people of God. It is a choice we must make each day, each moment, especially when it seems unthinkable to do so. Theodore Parker was a Unitarian minister and an abolitionist in the years around the Civil War, who once remarked to his congregation, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little way. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can only divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Martin Luther King Jr. paraphrased that same sentiment generations later, not long before he was shot and killed. His clear message was, remain faithful, even as he grew more and more certain that he would not live to see the fruit of his labor. He encouraged those around him by reminding them that the promised land was near. Though they may not all reach it together, it was near, and God was there, just as God had been with them all along. We may never be able to step back far enough or find a lens wide enough to give us God's kind of perspective. Our journey may be slow and stumbling. It may take us down a dark path where the end is uncertain to us. But along the way, we can learn to practice faithfulness, to trust that God sees the big picture, to listen for the voice of God, and to put one foot in front of the other until at last we see clearly. Amen.